Here's a thought experiment. Take your bathroom, not the nice one, the small one, the one guests use. Now imagine living in it with 3 other people. For 9 months, you can't open the window, you can't order food, and if something breaks, the nearest repairman is about 60 million kilometers away. Congratulations, you've just imagined life aboard a Mars spacecraft, because that's the thing nobody talks about when they talk about going to Mars. We get the rockets, we get the hero shots, we get Elon Musk saying 2029 the way your friend says I'll start going to the gym Monday, but what we don't talk about is the middle part, the 7 to 9 months of just floating in a can between 2 planets with nothing outside your window but the same stars, day after day after day. So let's talk about the can. NASA's current reference design for a Mars transit habitat is a hybrid inflatable structure with about 400 cubic meters of pressurized volume. That sounds decent, until you realize it's shared among 4 people, packed with equipment, and every wall is lined with supply bags, because those bags also happen to be your radiation shield. You get roughly 59 cubic meters of personal space. That's actually comparable to what astronauts get on the International Space Station. Except the ISS has resupply ships, emergency evacuation capsules, and Earth visible right there in the window. Your Mars habitat has none of that. So what does a day actually look like? Let's start with waking up. You unzip yourself from a sleeping bag that's velcroed to the wall of your phone booth-sized cabin. There's a constant low hum, fans, pumps, life support, the kind of white noise that never ever stops. You slept with earplugs, everyone does. On the ISS, the 90-minute orbit creates 16 sunrises every 24 hours, which wrecks your body clock. In deep space, you won't have that problem, but you'll have a new one. Absolutely no natural light cues at all. Your circadian rhythm is now entirely dependent on a programmable LED panel, shifting between blue, white, and red modes throughout the day. Breakfast is a pouch. Specifically, it's one of roughly 200 shelf-stable menu items, freeze-dried, thermostabilized, irradiated, with names like Kung Pao chicken and shrimp cocktail. Bread is banned because crumbs float into equipment and cause havoc, so you eat tortilla wraps instead. You'll consume somewhere between 900 and 200 calories a day, and every gram of that food was packed years ago. And there's the rub. NASA classifies the food system for Mars as a red risk, meaning they don't yet have a good solution. Vitamins degrade. Nutrients break down. By the time you're eating your shrimp cocktail on month 8, it may have the nutritional value of flavored cardboard. After breakfast, you exercise. Not because you want to, because you will literally fall apart if you don't. Without gravity loading your skeleton, you lose bone density at about 0.35% per month, over 1% per month in weight-bearing areas like your hips. So you strap into an elastic harness on a treadmill, or you climb onto a piston-driven resistance machine that simulates squats and deadlifts, or you pedal a stationary bike 2 to 2.5 hours a day, 6 days a week. It is, without exaggeration, the most important thing you do on the spacecraft. Because unlike an ISS astronaut, you can't just collapse into a medical team's arms when you land. You need to walk on Mars when you arrive, in a spacesuit, on a planet with 38% of Earth's gravity. Nobody is carrying you. Now let's talk about what keeps the mission planners up at night. And it's not the rocket, it's the stuff that's invisible. Start with radiation. Outside Earth's magnetic field, you're exposed to a constant drizzle of galactic cosmic rays, high-energy particles from ancient supernovae, at a rate of about 1.8 millisieverts per day. For context, you absorb about 2.4 millisieverts in an entire year standing on Earth. A full Mars round trip would deliver roughly 1010 millisieverts, nearly double NASA's own career exposure limit of 600. There is no full solution. Aluminum shielding barely dents cosmic rays. Water and polyethylene help more. The habitat will have a dedicated storm shelter for solar particle events. But mostly, the best radiation strategy is simply to get there faster. Every 90 days you shave off the trip saves you about 135 millisieverts. Speed is medicine. Then there's communication. Or rather, the lack of it. The speed of light puts a one-way delay of anywhere from 3 to 22 minutes between you and Earth. Depending on where the planets are, that's a round trip of 6 to 48 minutes. You cannot have a phone call, you cannot have mission control talk you through an emergency in real time. And during solar conjunction, when the sun sits directly between Earth and Mars. Communication goes completely dark for about 13 days. You are, for all practical purposes, on your own. NASA and internet pioneer Vint Cerf developed something called delay-tolerant networking for exactly this scenario. A store-and-forward protocol that caches data packets at intermediate nodes and passes them along when a link opens up. It was tested on a deep space probe, deployed on ISS payloads, and used operationally on NASA's PACE mission in 2024 with perfect delivery rates. It works, but it doesn't change the fundamental truth. When something goes wrong, you solve it yourself or you wait. And that brings us to the scariest slide in any NASA Mars briefing: no abort option. On a lunar mission, if things go sideways, you can be home in 3 or 4 days. On a Mars mission, if you initiate an abort on day 30, you're still looking at 300 or more days before you see Earth again. NASA's own analysis puts it bluntly: if a life-threatening emergency triggers an abort, loss of crew is likely regardless of what you do. This isn't a design flaw. It's physics. The distances are simply too vast, and the orbital mechanics too unforgiving. It demands a completely different way of thinking. Not how do we get them home, but how do we make sure they never need to come home early? Redundancy, spares, autonomy. The crew becomes the mission control, so why go? Honestly, after everything I just told you about bone loss and radiation and the impossibility of rescue, why would anyone climb into that can? Here's why. Because there is no version of the human story that doesn't include this chapter. We crossed oceans in ships that leaked. We flew in machines held together with wire and canvas. We went to the moon in a spacecraft with less computing power than your coffee maker. None of it was safe. None of it was certain. And every single time the people who went knew that. The first crew to Mars won't be superhuman. There'll be 4 or 6 people who get cranky, who miss their families, who are sick of shrimp cocktail by month 3, who exercise for 2 hours a day, not out of heroism, but because the alternative is their own skeleton betraying them. They'll patch things. They'll improvise. They'll send messages home that won't be answered for 45 minutes. When they finally see that rust-colored disk grow from a dot to a world filling their window, they'll know something no human being has ever known: what it looks like to arrive at another planet. The transit habitat hasn't been built yet. The propulsion system hasn't been chosen. The food problem hasn't been solved. NASA's best guess is sometime in the late 2030s, and even that comes with an asterisk. But the work is happening in inflatable habitat prototypes, in CHAPEA analog missions where volunteer crews spend a year in a simulated Mars base, in nuclear propulsion studies and delay-tolerant networking tests, and 98% efficient water recyclers. Piece by piece, problem by problem. Not because it's easy, and not because we're sure it'll work, but because we are the species that looked at the horizon and thought, I wonder what's past that. Mars is just the next horizon. And the can? The can is how we get there.